Okay. Okay, we're here with the leadership and the work of leaders, business essentials for your company to learn innovative transformational techniques. Our instructor seminar sponsored by our Global Leadership Association. This is Dr. Edward Gould, and we talk about the nature of leadership. If we first look at that nature of leadership, it's the processes and behaviors used by one, such as a manager or someone in control or charge of a company, to motivate, inspire, and influence the behaviors of others. So that leadership and management aren't necessarily the same, because a person can be a manager or a leader, or both or neither. And they talk about how the manager is more focused at the operational essence of the business, where the leader is more focused at the inspirational motivation and effective collaboration of people in the organization. And that can be done in many different ways. That's what we're going to look at here. And Kotter's distinction between management and leadership. Basically, Kotter talks about creating an agenda, and we're looking at these different activities in the first column. And in the second column, we're going to be looking at the management view of what's perceived to be involved in the activity. And then the third column will be looking at that from the perspective of leadership, from the leader's perspective. So the examples they're using here: creating an agenda, and management. From a management perspective, we're planning and budgeting, establishing detailed steps and timetables for achieving needed results. And they talk about the they talk about those results. Then from a leadership standpoint, inspiring, developing a vision of the future, often the distant future, and the strategies needed to achieve that vision. So how to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Have to strategize the time periods and how you're going to bring that through total fruition. Organizing and staffing, they talk about the developing a human network for achieving the agenda. So organizing and staffing, getting the people in place necessary to get these things accomplished. Aligning people, communicating the direction in the direction and in getting the buy-in and cooperation needed to influence the people to get those things accomplished. And controlling and problem solving with the execution of plans. They talk about the monitoring results and the idea of motivating and inspiring. So energizing the people to overcome major political, bureaucratic, and resource barriers to change by satisfying their human needs. And from an outcome standpoint, getting the things accomplished, management produces a degree of predictability and order, and has the potential to consistently produce major results. And leadership focuses on the production of change. So if we have a fairly static circumstance, management's going to be complacent and in reasonable capability to effectively operate the outcome to fruition. Whereas if we have a more changing and especially transformational changing environment issue, we're going to need to produce more change and dramatic degree of new orientation to deal with the transformational breaks and changes to make that outcome, to bring the outcome to fruition. Then they talk about the idea of the situational approach to leadership. Actually, that situational approach is attributed to Blanchard and his researches, assuming it's a lot like a contingency concept, and it assumes that an appropriate leader behavior varies from one situation to another. The continuum of leadership ranges from having the leader make the decisions alone, or being task-oriented, or to having employees make the decision with minimal guidance. That would be like laissez-faire, or more competent in-the-know employee is going to be given that leeway. That's going to be used in your happening, changing companies where the people, employees, and constituents in the field have more knowledge than those sitting in the higher offices with the given formal power. The leadership continuum from Harvard Business Review explains the concept of boss-centered leadership as it relates to and integrates with freedom for subordinates or subordinate-centered leadership. And from the man knows what to do on the left-hand side, boss-centered, you do it or else, I'm going to take this through some simple examples. So a good time, now one is not necessarily better than the other, and I'll give you an example for each, bringing it through fruition. And we'll use, in the first case here, a doctor doing an operation is going to have to make the decision and announce it and have it clearly defined and have it clearly followed immediately. Nurse, hand me the scalpel. That would be an example on the left here. Manager sells the decision. Now, before you go into the operating room, the doctor, the head doctor or head surgeon, might explain to the team what is anticipated and what's going to be needed to done to save the patient's life. The doctor is still in all know, but still recognizing the team, parts of the team are necessary to get him the scalpel to do the operation to save the patient. Then here the manager presents ideas and invites questions. Now let's say we're doing rounds and we have this patient, we're getting ready to determine what kind of operation, what's going to go on with this patient. Now the doctor is going to, and in real life we'll do this actually on the rounds, we'll invite questions and ask questions of constituents and nurses and subordinate doctors, what kind of questions you have about this patient, and planning the operation. And then in the middle here, manager presents tentative decision subject to change. Here you go. Now we're at the intake of a patient, And initially we've got this idea that we're going to operate on the patient, but we still haven't cleared everything. So now the intake people have a little more say, some tests to be done. So now we've got nurses, subordinate doctors, and intake people that are giving information towards this possible future operation. The manager presents the problem, gets suggestions, makes decision. So now the intake doctor is actually working with nurses and people. They're collecting blood. The staff is checking the weight and what's going on. One of the other nurses are getting the symptoms of the patient. Now they're trying to figure out what the problem with the patient is. Here the manager defines limits, asks the groups to make decisions. This is now the doctor's really hardly involved. The doctor just says, okay, team A, you figure out what's wrong. The doctor's hardly doing anything at this point. And then manager permits subordinates to function when within limits defined by a superior. Here, the doctor's not even involved in the initial. This is the initial intake. So you got the initial intake of the patient. You got some people taking the patient's the prospective patient's information. Now you've got intake nurses and doctors that are evaluating things. Do we need to expedite this or not? Now we've got floor nurses and doctors that'll evaluate which area this person is going to go in for the next evaluation. Is this an emergency issue? Is this eyes near ear, throat thing? Is this what tests we got to do to get them down to this next room where the top doctor has a little say? And then they talk about the idea of leadership through the eyes of followers. And this transformational leadership, a set of abilities that allows the leader to recognize the need for change, to create a vision, to guide change, and execute change. That's when there's a lot of change going on, where there's a lot of dynamics. Transactional leadership, basic management involving routine, regimented activities, leading during a period of stability. They talk about leadership through the eyes of the followers, and they talk about special issues in leadership, and they talk about leadership substitutes and neutralizers, and the changing nature of leadership as coach, relative to gender issues, cross-cultural issues of leadership, and any more specific questions that you have about the live informational chat, please email me your feedback. And speaking of me, okay, we're here with the leadership and the work of leaders. Business essentials for your company to learn innovative transformational techniques. Our instructor seminar, sponsored by our Global Leadership Association. This is Dr. Edward Gould. And we talk about the nature of leadership. If we first look at that nature of leadership, it's the processes and behaviors used